Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Sim's Chat Corner this morning. We're going to be having our exclusive interview with Rickie Lee Tanner this morning. What? Okay, folks, thanks so much for holding on for us. Apparently we're having a bit of technical difficulty. As I had earlier stated, I'm very, very excited to be having Rickie Lee Tanner, my good friend, on the show this morning. So without further ado, let's not have him keep waiting, and we'll get him on the line. Hey, good morning, Rickie.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay for this very soon-to-be snowy Tuesday afternoon here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm not looking forward to the snow that we have coming. Not excited, but I'm very excited to have you on the show. There's a lot that I learned about you, and I have a bunch of questions for you.
Okay. All right. Shoot. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, not a problem at all whatsoever. I wanted to first start off by saying I know that your original place of birth is noted as North Carolina, but I'm to understand that your childhood was mainly spent living in a place called Belton, Missouri. Did I get that right?
Yes. I'd lived in Belton from the time I was 7, so until well after graduation and all that.
Okay, I gotcha. I wanted to state a little known fact here because I did a little research, and I noticed that other individuals from Missouri, Sheryl Crow, Eminem, Sarah Evans, who happens to be a country singer as well, along with Burt Bacharach, which used to be one of my personal favorites, which is now showing my age, of course. I'd like you to speak to our audience about how music grew to become your foundation in terms of when you were youth. How did you get to starting out young as you are, having this passion for music?
Well, you know, my grandpa was a professional musician, and he was a guitar player, and I used to sit and listen to him play when I was a kid, and you know, it was kind of one of those things that it was in me all, you know, from the very beginning, and you know, I stepped on a stage for the first time. I think I was like 13 years old, 12, 13 years old, something like that, and you know, once you've been bitten by the bug, you know, you know, it's either something you know you're meant to do or something that you're not. And for me, it was a very clear thing that it was something I absolutely loved.
Okay. And am I also to presume, and forgive me for my ignorance, because of course I'm not from Missouri, I'm here from Wisconsin, when you're growing up as a young person, was there a plethora of opportunity that was kind of handed to you? Because I know you started off as being a teenager when you were first getting going. Was there a whole lot of musical outlets or musical opportunities outlaid to someone such as yourself being in that area as compared to, let's say, Nashville or someplace that's more musically orientated?
Well, the musical opportunities that were there for me early on was there were 6 Opries within a 2-hour radius of where I lived, and you know, I got my start becoming a guest singer on those Opries. Okay.
And, of course, can you detail a little bit to the average novice such as myself, because I'm a writer, I'm not a musician, playing, let's say, in an Opry-like scenario as compared to playing, you know, a private establishment. Let's say you go to a bar, restaurant, that sort of thing. Detail for us how that experience varies for you and how it helps you in terms of your career musically.
Well, Opry's, the thing that's most popular to do at Opry's is to perform, you know, the classics in country music. And so, you know, I got my start, you know, very early singing, you know, George Jones and Merle Haggard and you know, the classic George Strait songs and things like that on the Opry stage. So it gave me a true appreciation for you know, my country music history.
Sure, I imagine so.
You know, when you're at an Opry, the you know, usually the musicians on the you know, that are full-time members of that particular Opry and your crowd are a little bit older set, and so you get to sit down and you know, pick their brains a little bit and learn so much I learned a lot of the things to do's and don'ts, if you will, by sitting and speaking with some of the older gentlemen that had been in the business for decades.
Oh, I imagine so. And if I can ask you to maybe reflect and tell us a little bit about, in terms of your own personal, I don't want to say idols, but just individuals you looked up to from a musical perspective that kind of inspired you to start doing what you love to do.
So, like my favorite singers, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I grew up listening a lot to Conway Twitty, Don Williams. Those were the guys that really, were inspiring to me. But of course, there was also, Earl Thomas Conley and John Conley and guys like that, and right on into Keith Whitley and all of the really great classic country voices that are out there.
Okay, I've got it. So you're mainly country inspired, because I know that it's been stated, or you've stated before in the past, that I guess I get the impression from you that you may not necessarily categorize yourself as just country. Does that make sense?
Right, and not always. I mean, it's my music leans a little bit more, these days towards the contemporary country, genre, which is, which contemporary country isn't what country music was, back when I started, and there's a lot of influence there from other artists that in genres, like John Cougar Mellencamp and Bob Dylan and guys like that have influenced country music a great deal as well, and even some of your real modern country music has some hip hop influence to it.
Sure. Oh, certainly. And I've asked this question of other country artists, if you will, and I'm curious to get your take on this, because now we live in the birth and advent of things like American Idol, of course, and The Voice, etc. Some of the opportunities that some did not have when they were first coming up in country music. So my question to you is what is your take on that? I mean, some people are out there and they're saying, this is just an easy, quick means to get into the industry. Some people think that it's, a good foundation to start. I mean, what is your feel for that?
Well, there's that's a real mixed bag of tricks, if you will. Some of them that win these contests, they're people who've been singing and performing for decades. You just may have never heard of them. Recently, X Factor, the last season of X Factor, a guy I went to high school with actually won the contest.
Oh, really?
Tate Stevens. Yeah, Tate was a year ahead of me in the same high school. So.
Okay.
And so you see guys like that I know his backstory, because I've been right there on the scene with him, and I know that he'd been doing this for a long time, and it was finally it was his time, and it was a long time waiting, and he was very deserving of it. And then there's other artists that they step up there and they've never really performed in front of crowds, and they're they are dynamite and they're talented, but the drawbacks to that is they don't necessarily know exactly how to handle themselves on stage and how to deal with a situation when it arises.
Okay. Had you ever been at a point where you had considered or had the opportunity presented to you to participate in such a contest?
I've participated in a few of those, actually, and it's funny because I've ended up in the round right before television, a couple different times with a couple of different programs, and the thing to realize is it's like winning the lottery. There are tens of thousands of people trying out for this thing that are phenomenal singers and performers, and not every one of them get to win. That's just all there is to it. And when you're at each particular level, whatever judges you have that are moving people on, it just determines whether the people that are in front of them, who they like the best, and they're the ones that hold all the power in those situations.
Sure. And I think you made the perfect choice, or I should say the perfect decision in your regard, actually. Since I've now learned about you, listened to your music, and getting a sense of who you are, I think you are 100% on track for about 15 reasons I'm going to name through the course of this interview, so prepare yourself. You're about to blush, hopefully, a couple of different times, I hope. because I'm very, very impressed, and will be enlightening to the audience shortly exactly why I have such an adoration for you. But I wanted to kind of delve, and obviously this is public knowledge. Certainly, if anybody goes to Rickie's website, you're going to see kind of the same information we're going to talk about right now. So I want to start off by just saying that I have just the utmost of respect and admiration for you. Because just looking at the website and reading about your back history as it's relative to your childhood, I can only imagine that certain elements proved to be quite heart-wrenching for you. By that I mean, of course, obviously, not having established a relationship with your father and not having the knowledge or existence of the mother in your life. I wanted to ask you how that experience has either helped or hindered in your own parenting ability.
You know, I think through that I learned a lot of the things that I really wish I would have had my parents there for. You know, the life experiences that I've had, and you know, there's the times where things were tough, and I really, you know, looking back on it, wish they'd have been there for this and that they would have done or said this. It has kind of to help guide me whenever I see my kids going through something that I'm like, you know, when I was a kid, I would have wanted somebody to have been there for this and wanted them to have said or helped me with this.
Okay, got it. Do you feel that music has served to be, for lack of a better term, maybe an antidote in terms of painful memories or painful situations in your life? Has that been any form of a solution for you?
Oh, absolutely. Music is very therapeutic, especially writing. You know, because you can sit down and you can pour all of your feelings and thoughts on something out onto a page. And I mean, sometimes you write songs that are very personal to you that you'll never perform for anybody ever because that's not what they were for. They were written as just a kind of personal therapy.
Sure. Wonderful. And I can imagine that everyone needs that one outlet or another, whether it's writing, singing, whatever the case may be. Now, I note that you have obviously initiated a search at some point in time to find your actual birth mother. I'm just curious to ask, and I've crossed my fingers in the hopes that you're going to tell me that you're somewhat successful in this or have had some sort of a lead, or have you kind of gotten to a standstill at this point?
It's a dead end every direction I turn. I mean, I've even had there was a television show that's what they did, was reunite people with lost relatives that you know had gotten a hold of my story. They contacted me. And they said they wanted to help. And so I sent them all the information I had. And 3 or 4 months went by, and they contacted me, and they said, we're sorry, we're just not going to be able to help you. And, you know, that was very disheartening when I'm like, well, that's what these people do for a living, is find
Sure.
people. And they couldn't even find any additional information, let alone find her.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was very disheartening. I mean, the information what limited information I have, you know, because of my birth certificate, I know her name, I know her approximate age, and you know, I know that she had a child at Duke Research Hospital in Durham, North Carolina. But you know, that's about it.
And how frustrating that must be. Goodness gracious. Did you ever get to a point, are you kind of at that point where you almost feel as though you have to surrender to defeat, or you feel like you're just going to keep purging forth until you find her?
You know, I don't think I'll ever stop wanting to know the answers, you know, because what stories that I do get from relatives and stuff like that I do know, you know, the stories change left and right, and you know, you never know what or who to believe in those situations, and you know, for all I know, you know, she could have passed away years ago, you know, but my gut tells me that even if she's not out there, I have other relatives out there.
Correct.
That maybe I can locate them and find out the answers even if she's gone. And so, you know, it's going to be a lifelong quest, I imagine. You know, a lot of the questions that I had, I'm sure my biological father passed away just you know, not too long ago. And, you know, I know a lot of the questions that I had, you know, the answers that I wanted potentially died with him.
Oh, my goodness, I'm so sorry. And I guess the other frustrating part is, of course, too, you have children, so I'm assuming that you would like your children to know somewhat of your roots as it's relative to that as well. So I can imagine it extends to them also.
Absolutely, and you know, I have children that are on the autism spectrum as well, and I would like to know that know if there's any if there's anything related to that within that side of the family, or if there's any other if there's any potentially genetic disorders or anything like that I need to know about, and that kind of stuff. Because even from just purely from a medical standpoint, you'd like to know what kind of things that you could potentially be facing.
Definitely, I understand completely. I hear you. Okay, well, let's start nodding to you, and let's start giving you all sorts of accolades and praises, because I got a whole list of stuff here that I want to say how wonderful you are about. So my first nod is going to start off as it relates to your education. Now, despite what one would call a tumultuous start to your life, you still managed to earn a degree in computer science and also became valedictorian of your class with a 4.0 GPA. Kudos to you. Oh, my God.
Thank you.
Now, the computer science thing, now, did you do that with the intent of, okay, I need to have a fallback just in case the music thing doesn't work out, or were you legitimately carrying an interest in that? How did that come about?
A lot of that came about because I've always had an interest in computers. The first computer I had, was literally, it had come out of a dumpster and didn't work, and was brought home to me, and I disassembled it myself and rounded up parts and put it back together and made a functioning computer out of it. And so I had a very big interest in that kind of stuff even as a child.
Okay. And then did you happen to, was any portion of your time spent in terms of your education on any form of musical education? Because I was having a hard time finding that.
Actually, no. I wasn't even in choir in high school or anything.
Wow.
And it was, music was something that I did, and it was a very personal thing for me for a long time. But I didn't get up the nerve to perform in front of anyone that I knew really until I was a senior in high school. It was the first time that I got up on a stage and performed in front of my peers, and it was. That was kind of one of those moments where once they accepted me when I performed for them, it really did solidify that, okay, well, even people who maybe didn't necessarily, I was picked on a lot and stuff in high school. I was kind of the scrawny, weird, kind of awkward kid, and so I was picked on a lot. And once I performed, it was funny because some of the people who had given me a hard time all of a sudden became very accepting of me. Mm-hmm. And, it was kind of an eye-opener as far as that goes as well, because then you find out that there are people out there, you really learn that life lesson. There are people out there that they pay attention to you for what you can do and not necessarily who you are.
Gotcha. And, of course, that's how it should be. One's individuality, I've always said, should be recognized. It isn't necessarily it's heart value and presence, not presence. That's what I always say. I wanted to cite another fun fact about you, which actually I think is quite impressive, because you really don't hear about this a lot in terms of your particular career choice, meaning that you've never done any drugs, you've never smoked a cigarette, never drank a drop of alcohol. I want to ask, do you think this accomplishment is accredited in part to your being a born-again Christian, or is it just a personal choice?
It's kind of funny. It was a personal choice that I made early in life that I just, I really didn't have any interest in that sort of stuff. I had seen the destructive path that had brought to so many people, and I said, I don't ever want that as an excuse. And it's not a morality issue for me. I'm around people who are drinking and smoking and stuff like that all the time, and it's not a getting up on a moral high horse about it. To each their own, and people can do with their lives and their bodies what they want. And it was just a personal choice for me not to walk down that path, because there are a lot of different information out there. Some that say that addictive behavior is hereditary, some that say it has nothing to do with it. But, my biological father, he battled with substance issues and things like that. And it was like, why even worry about that? Okay. Why even put myself in a situation where that could become an issue? And so, it was just a personal choice early on. It didn't make any logical sense to me, because, people tell you, well, it'll help you loosen up. It'll help you And I'm like, well, or I hope you lose your inhibitions. And I think if I lose any more inhibitions on stage, we're going to be doing this on stage with less clothes on. Because, I've never been inhibited on stage.
Okay. And that's actually a good thing, I have to say. You've been described quite a bit as carrying that real high spirit and heavy energy and just being very charismatic. And I like that. I like a stage personality. I think most people like a stage presence where you're in our face and you're really active with us, and we enjoy that, obviously. And you have a niche for that, I think. So you've never been tempted to fall prey to an addiction, especially since obviously you just noted your father had struggled with that. So there's never a point in time, even in your darkest day, you've ever been tempted to try?
No. It holds no interest to me whatsoever. It never has.
And of course,
I've never even been curious.
Oh my goodness. That is different, my gosh, because I wanted to ask you, because you're obviously in a musical form and I'm not, and most of us aren't. Do you think it's common behavior, meaning to carry this addictive behavior as far as it relates to your music in the musical industry, meaning what you're surrounded in? Is it commonplace nowadays, do you think?
Well, I see and have offered to me a lot of different things throughout the years of doing this, and because of the position I'm in, people just automatically assume they see a musician, they think you're cool with it, and they're like, here, you want this? And it's just never been anything that was any interest to me. I've always been able to say, no, man, you go ahead. I don't have any interest, man.
Okay.
Gotcha. And that's just kind of been my life story, I guess, as far as that goes. Is it's there, I see it, but I have no interest in it. I have no curiosity what it's even like.
That's wonderful. That is a true testament, I think, to someone's character, because, you're very, very fortunate in that you don't carry that addictive nature with you and you're not a victim to it. Says the woman who's interviewing you, I'm on day 5 of quitting smoking, so I'm doing okay. I'm getting closer to your realm little by little by little. Okay, I wanted to talk about your family for a moment. You have a beautiful family consisting, of course, of your supportive wife, 2 daughters and a son. I found one of the discouraging realities for your lovely family, I would guess, is, of course, raising a son who I understand suffers from fatty acid oxidation disorder, as well as, of course, the plight of autism. And I'm sure many of us, of course, are cognizant of the disadvantages of being autistic, but most of us lack knowledge of. Can you tell us what exactly is fatty acid oxidation disorder?
Well, there are 60 long-chain fatty acids. And as your food is processed in your body, it goes down this chain. If there's a break in that chain, the food stops doing any of the beneficial things for you from that break on. Okay. And so, he had what was called a transient primary carnitine deficiency, and that's at like number 40 in the chain. Okay. And if you're ever interested in seeing more about the long-chain fatty acids and kind of how they work, a brilliant movie to watch is a movie called Lorenzo's Oil. Because it's a little boy that deals with a very similar situation, but his break is much earlier in the chain. Okay. Now, fortunately, my son was able to receive a carnitine supplement that helped with the situation, and once he started getting the carnitine, it was like a miracle. He just began to develop. I mean, because we were talking about he was 23 months old before he even pulled himself up for the first time. Oh my goodness. And he was so far behind, and we had doctors telling us to be prepared for him to never walk and talk, and just to be prepared for him to basically be a vegetable, and we would have to take care of him. And we refused to accept that for an answer. My wife is in the medical industry, and her and I spent hundreds of hours scouring the internet, trying to find answers, trying to find tests that we hadn't run yet, trying to find anything that we could find. And we stumbled upon this, and thankfully we had a really good pediatrician who was willing to pretty much say, well, okay, we can try this. There's no harm in trying this test. And so, he started running the tests that we would come to him with and say, how about this? Let's test for this.
Right.
And that's when they discovered the carnitine deficiency. Well, they didn't even know until 1999 that a carnitine deficiency could be a transient situation, meaning where you could test one time and the levels would be within range. And you could test again a couple days later and the levels were out of range. And that was the problem he was dealing with. So we were able to start giving him the carnitine, and once we discovered that, and the part that should really, open a lot of eyes out there is, and it's different from state to state, but in the state of Missouri, when a child is born, they test the long chain fatty acids, but they only test the first 20.
Oh.
The difference is like $20 on the test and checking 2 more boxes when you send the blood off for the test to check the other 40. And, there's some states that test all 60 right from the get-go, and they find problems like that, from day one.
Right.
And not all states do. And so we've kind of been championing the cause that, look, this needs to be something that every state does, that every state, because I don't think you'd find a parent out there that would say, well, I'll pay you the extra money for the test, and it doesn't take the test any longer. It just checks for more stuff, and it's going to find, potential problems out there. But, they didn't test beyond that point because it was very, very uncommon to have a break past 20.
Gotcha. Oh, my Lord. No wonder you're championing for that. My goodness, I marvel at the fact that that something that could so easily be prevented is something that's not being adhered to. Do you know what I mean? Well, obviously you know what I mean. You're living it. All of us are just kind of standing here in the background and learning about this, and how atrocious is that? My goodness.
And my son is, since finding that, my son has been an absolute miracle. From the time he started receiving the carnitine, he was, he went from just literally laying on his back and staring at the ceiling to crawling, to pulling himself up, to walking in just a matter of months.
Aw, my goodness.
And, he was, by the time he was 28 months, he was walking. At 23 months, he was laying on his back staring at the ceiling.
Sure.
And so, it was a real blessing once he started receiving what he needed, and then his body started metabolizing his food properly, to where it was actually nourishing not just his body, but his brain and every development and everything as well.
Gotcha. Of course. And his prognosis now, as we stand here today, bright, hopeful future, we hope, for him?
He's doing very well. He is, as we said, he's, on the autism spectrum, but he's mainstreamed in his classes, and he's a brilliant kid. He brings home his math homework, and it's kind of funny because he's getting into where they're doing things like 54 minus 36, and we got to solve a problem like that. And he will write the answer down, and then he goes up and crosses out and borrows and all that. And I said, what are you doing? You knew the answer. Why are you going up and crossing out? And he said, well, the teacher will think I did it wrong if I don't show my work.
Oh, my gosh. Look at that.
Because he doesn't need to show his work. He could just look at it and tell you what the answer was.
I gotcha. Sure. My goodness. Oh, that's one bright little rainbow to hear about. That's wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that part of it. I'm also very proud to say that I know that you have heavily in the past and continue to support the International Coalition for Autism and All Abilities. I'm just curious to ask if you can let us know. I'm always wondering, even though we are citizens here in Wisconsin or other places, what can we do as normal, average, ordinary citizens to help that cause? Is there anything we can do?
Well, the biggest thing that everyone should be doing is educating themselves. Because autism has become such a prevalent issue in this day and age that if you don't know anything about it at all, you're really missing out, because your chances are you're going to have people around you, you're going to have people in your family that are on the spectrum, and these could be anywhere from mild cases of Asperger's, which is a form of autism, and it's or to people who have, you know, much more severe issues who can't, you know, speak or express themselves, and you know, so it runs the gamut from very mild to very severe, and there's all different forms of issues that are associated with it. But it's also extremely common, and the biggest thing people can do is just, you know, go take the time to learn about it. They take the time to learn what the struggles that some of these people are dealing with are, and so that you could have a better understanding for it.
Very well put. I would have to agree with you 100%, definitely. And thank you so much for the work that you do with them. Certainly, we appreciate that, and I'm sure so do the other families as well. I want to switch over, obviously, to talk about you as a musician. I know that the formulation of your band originated, if I'm not mistaken, in the year 2006, with the debut single being Highway to Nowhere. Interested to ask, initial members that started with you, are they still currently with you? And was the idea of this band your brainchild or someone else's?
My guitar player is actually still with me from the original days, and my bass player has been with me for a long time. He just celebrated his 5th anniversary with us just this last weekend, as a matter of fact. But you know, band members have changed a little bit over the years, but this all started. The guitar player and I were in another band together, and we had become friends in that band, and well, they, as bands sometimes do, there was a little tiff, little issue, and they fired him. And, you know, back then it was one of those bands that were a quote-unquote democracy where there was 5 people in the band and everybody had an equal say, yada, yada. And so I showed up one day and well, it was after a show, they called a band meeting and they fired him. And and I'm like, nobody asked me. No one even bothered to get my opinion. And the 3 other guys said, well, we already had 3 votes. We didn't need yours.
Wow.
And, you know, at that point I went, you know what, guys, you're going to have to accept my resignation as well. And so I walked away from that situation, and when I did, I you know, the guitar player had already took off when they fired him. So I called him up and I said, man, let's, you know, we've been talking about putting together a project where we're doing original material from, you know, for years we've been talking about doing original material and doing things our way. Mm-hmm. I said, let's do it. You know, and it's funny, the doors that open up when you decide as an artist that it's time for your name to become a known commodity rather than just being in a, you know, lost in a band, so to speak. Sure. And for your music to be heard as a writer. And, right. You know, the doors that open up for you then are, there's different types of venues for you. There's different types of places that to play that are you're required to be doing original material. You know, a lot of your opening act gigs and stuff like that, they don't want somebody who could potentially be doing a cover song from the guy they're opening for.
Right.
on the stage, you know.
Right. Of course. I get you.
Excuse me.
That's okay. And when you put your band together originally, was it your mindset that you just saw right off the bat? You know what? I'm going to be doing country music. I'm going to have this rock and roll flair that I add to it. Were you clear in terms of what genre you wanted to be in, where you wanted to go with this? Or was it all kind of like, all right, let's just fly by the seat of our pants and see where we end up?
I was the only thing that was clear was we were going to do music we were writing. And, okay. And whatever kind of stuff we ended up writing and how it came out was going to be influenced by what really spoke to us rather than you know, being defined necessarily by a genre or a particular set of quote-unquote rules. We were just going to play our music and play it our way, and however people interpreted it is how people interpret it.
Sure. And when you first got out there, did you find that you were little by little getting more and more well-received, or was it kind of like one leap after one hurdle after another hurdle to kind of get yourself out there?
You know, I think it was actually easier doing things our way than it was being in a cover band. Because we went out there and we immediately got involved very first year there with the songwriters festival down in Nashville, and we got down there and we started doing writers' nights, and you know, and then next thing we know, we were playing in venues that you know, only allowed you to do original material, and you know, we still do the covers and stuff as well, because you know, when you're playing your bar and club gigs, that's you know, what that people have an easier time dancing to stuff they've heard. But you know, even in those gigs, we do, you know, we'll do 3 or 4 originals a set.
Oh, gotcha. And of course, now that
it's
you're
great when you see people out there dancing to your stuff and singing along.
So if I were to ascertain right now, and just knowing you the little that I do, would it be a proper assessment to say you probably take more pride in the songwriting component or being the musician part of it?
You know, I've worked very hard to try to stay fairly well-rounded, and I'm you know, take pride and put the effort into all aspects of my career, be it that, you know, as an entertainer, as a singer, as a writer. You know, I can't claim to be a guitar player. I play guitar well enough to write.
That's well put. Thank you. Yeah, you seem to resonate this just lack of a better word, passion as it relates to your songwriting, which is refreshing, because usually I talk to most people that have that combined passion, which is I love to play my guitar and I love to write my songs, and I won't do one without the other, or prefer to do both together. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I don't think I could ever go back to being in a purely cover band ever again. It's you know, just it's something that's not nearly as fulfilling. And even though I can look back to my very, very first band that I was in when I was, you know, just the first bar band I was in. I was 19 years old, and we were playing, you know, a couple of my originals even back then.
Okay, gotcha. And like you're saying, what a cool feeling that must be to introduce your work for the first time and second time, and people just get up and they enjoy it, and they're part of it. They're physically and mentally present, and that's got to be a huge rush. I can only imagine. I want to point out some more further props to you, in case we had not noted this before. Of course, I know that you have performed on Nashville on Stage, Smart Country, as well as you had mentioned, the contest, just to name a few, the Colgate Country Showdown, as well as the Nashville Star. And, of course, the third component being that I know that you've opened up for a variety of different established artists. Chris Cagle is the last one I can think of off the top of my head. If I were to ask you, personally, what possible venues and musical associations would you wish to see for yourself somewhere down the pike here? If I gave you, like, the dream venue and the dream association or collaboration, who would it be and where would it be?
You know, I think I've already gotten a taste of some of that. You know, I've had the good fortune to play some venues like you know, the St. Charles Family Arena, you know, the Carney Amphitheater, and when you're playing venues like that, you're playing in front of thousands of people, and thousands of people that are you know, that are paying attention, which isn't always the case when you're playing, you know, you're playing a bar. A lot of times people are there, they're there for different reasons. They're there to try and pick up on somebody or something like that, and they're not really paying much attention to the band.
Sure.
So, you know, I think to some extent, like I said, I've already gotten to fulfill a lot of that, playing some of those really cool venues like that, and the fairs and festivals and doing the opening acts and things is wonderful. You know, I love fairs and festivals because they're all ages shows most of the time, where you're getting to play in front of, you know, the kids and things like that, and seeing them out dancing and enjoying the music too is really cool.
Oh, I bet it is, definitely, especially the child component, too. I get a kick out of those little kids that love that kind of music, and they just get up and they're bouncing and dancing. It's really, really cool. Another thing I wish to cite as a praise to you again, by way of the fact, my personal opinion is, and I do this for a living, I market and I do promotion all day long as well, you, I consider to be a marketing genius, just because of the fact that, A, your new studio album, entitled This Year, was just completely funded on Kickstarter, because I know you just completed your campaign not so long ago. Your gig lineup, from what I can tell based on your website, appears to be full and active, as well as I know that you carry on an ongoing active maintenance as it relates to your social media campaign and presence. How have you become so versed in this area, and to what do you attribute all that success?
So, in this day and age, especially if you're not on a label and you're doing it yourself, you have to do it yourself. You have
Right.
to go out there and you have to work hard and do it. Otherwise, there's no one going to do it for you. When you're on a label, you may have a whole marketing team that'll sit down and take care of all that stuff for you, so that all you have to do is show up and play. But when you're an independent and you're not on a label, there's no choice but to go out there and do it yourself. Otherwise, you'll just kind of fade away into obscurity. Your only real presence will be at your shows, which in this nowadays isn't good enough.
Right. I was going to say, and you being, of course, being an independent, and I know quite a number of independent musicians, from a realistic standpoint, do you think that many get discouraged or become frustrated, or it becomes much easier to fall through the cracks if you don't have that huge label or that huge marketing background, or do you know what I mean? I mean, do you think it's much harder for you to find success?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be, you have to not only be an artist, but you have to be a businessman as well, and you have to surround yourself with a good team as well. Like as you mentioned earlier, my wife does so much for me that I couldn't even begin to possibly thank her for everything she does. I mean, there wouldn't be hardly anything on the schedule without her, because she does the booking and management, and it's kind of cool because there's no one who's going to take care of you better than someone who loves you.
Of course. That's neat. That's absolutely wonderful. How cool is that? And you have that love and support, and I think that is instrumental. I think any good artist, performer, or otherwise, without having that backing, it's just, you're one person, but there's no team, or there's no I in team. That's what they call it. So that's amazing that you have that support at home. That's good to hear. Now, I'm very happy to report that I've listened to, of course, some of your different music that you've produced so far. And for me personally, just a cite, in listening to you, you remind me most of Tim McGraw, although I think you might have heard this before, but that's just my personal opinion. Do you ever find that to be not insulting, but just do you have a problem being comparative, or being compared, I should say, to nowadays, the higher accolade sort of artists out there in your field?
Absolutely not. It's actually an honor, because if they're comparing you to somebody who's very wealthy and accomplished in the business, then they're comparing you. They're saying that in their eyes, there's no reason you shouldn't be just as successful. Which even if that's not, if I don't share that opinion that I'm ready to be there at that level or not, that means somebody thinks I should be.
Right.
And so it's from that aspect, it's still very flattering.
I kind of peg you as an individual artist who likes to, for lack of a better term, individuality is important to you. I sense that you are your own character, you have your own beliefs, you establish your own, show as far as to how you perform, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I perceive you as that, wanting that individuality. Is Rickie Lee Tanner is Rickie Lee Tanner, and that's who he is, sort of thing. I also wanted to ask you if you can give us a glimpse into your current single, Fast Lane, if you can maybe talk to the audience about where the inspiration came for that song, and tell us how it's available or how we can get access to it.
The Fast Lane was the title track of my first studio album, and it was inspired by my hometown, Belton, Missouri, where I grew up.
Okay.
And it was kind of funny because when I was a little bitty kid, Belton was a town that was full of farmland and farmers, and you drive around tractors on back roads and stuff all the time. And as I grew up, that kind of stopped being the case. A lot of those gravel roads got paved over. A lot of that farmland was sold and turned into the strip malls, and so that song was kind of inspired by the fact that I don't always necessarily view progress as a good thing. When you call progress, paving over a farmer's field to build another shopping complex that we don't need because there's one just like it down the street.
Right.
Because my grandpa was a farmer, and farmers feed our families, and so it was just kind of heart wrenching to me at times when I would see that farmland go away. And so that's what was inspired by, and you know, the gist of the song is when the fast lane ran over my hometown.
Gotcha. Okay. And now for individuals that want to get their hands on your music, obviously I wanted to mention, first of all, I noticed in your repertoire that most of the gigs or individual places that you are at usually reside either around Illinois or Missouri. Do you foresee down the pike here branching out, making the tour more extensive to reach more individuals in other places?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we would be branched out even more now if it weren't for the fact that, you know, just where we're at in the state of trying to put, you know, almost $4 a gallon gas in the tour vehicles and whatnot to try and, you know, get someplace. It's hard to find a club that's able to pay you what you would have to drive that far.
Sure, I imagine so.
You know,
and
you have to be able to come home with more green in your pocket than you left with.
Of course. Makes perfect sense. And now, because I don't fully understand, I know I'm familiar with the Kickstarter campaign. Now that you've been fully funded, what's the next step or what's the next part of the process so that individuals can get their hands on your new copy of your new CD?
Well, this is my second studio album, and it's in the hands right now of the mixing engineer, who's a Grammy-nominated guy named Tim Carter. You know, and it's after it gets back from mixing, it's still got to go off to mastering, and then it'll be off to duplication. And once that's done, I'm sure we're going to have it up on iTunes and all that kind of stuff as well. And again, for anybody out there listening, I do want to give a big, heartfelt thank you to all the people who were backers on Kickstarter that helped make it a reality, because we wouldn't have been able to finish it without them.
Oh, I imagine so, definitely. Yes, it's amazing how those things can be so fruitful in terms of assisting you to get your music out there and to make you just noticeable and people know who you are. That's absolutely wonderful. Yes, thank you. Now, I want to go through the rundown here before I forget in terms of places to find you. Obviously, I wanted to know your website, www.rickieleetanner.com. I know that you are also on Twitter with the same handle, Rickie Lee Tanner, and that's all together. I know that you have your music. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said right, yeah. I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Okay. I gotcha. I also note, obviously, Reverb Nation, and I've also seen that you have a profile on MySpace as well as having your music on YouTube. Any other forms of social media or other places that people can find you?
You know, I'm a Google search away.
I've noticed that actually.
There's lots of different places you can find me. Some of it's not necessarily kept up with as much anymore because it's just a media that's not really used that much anymore. Like, you know, MySpace obviously is kind of taking a backseat to Facebook these days, but you know, you don't delete the page because it at least still does have information about you there, and then they can find you, you know, in other places from there.
Correct. Definitely. And so I'm gathering that we're probably looking at a good lead time of at least a couple more months before we're going to see the new album.
We're shooting for sometime between the end of March and mid-April that it will be completed and ready to go. So, like I said, the mixing guy is mixing it now, and he's doing an absolute stellar job. And it'll be off to a mastering lab, and of course, you know, it's first come, first serve when you get to those places. So, you know, I don't know how much time that's going to take, but when that's done, of course, it's off to duplication, which takes a couple weeks, and then we'll have to get it registered with a service to distribute it to iTunes, and that takes a little bit of time too. And of course, the people will be able to buy it, you know, as soon as we get them back from duplication, they'll be able to buy them at the shows.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Great.
But the first people to get their hands on them will be those who were backers on Kickstarter, because they're getting them first.
Of course, and that's to be expected, obviously, because if they give that support, they are more than entitled to that, of course. Well, I have to say, Mr. Tanner, you are nothing short of impressive. I have to say that I was impressed before I spoke to you. I'm even more impressed now. I mean, you're a top-notch individual. I have the utmost, like I said, respect and just admiration for the things you've lived through and how you've turned this around and made a beautiful musical career and developed an absolutely amazing family. I'm hoping and praying that you have nothing but success and, of course, good fortune for your family. And I certainly am going to leave you an open door invitation as you get bigger and better. Please come back and visit us again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to do it again.
Sure. All right. I appreciate it, dear. Well, you take care, and we'll be talking in the near future.
All right. You take care.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening to my exclusive interview with Mr. Rickie Lee Tanner. I just have to say once again what an inspiring story that is. Just to be able to take your life and despite the just lack of a better term, the harsh realities of life as it relates to childhood and families, that he's able to produce such beautiful music, that he's such a grounded individual with so many accomplishments, young father, husband, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. So please make it a point to follow him on Twitter at Rickie Lee Tanner. Facebook, of course, he has a personal page. www.rickieleetanner.com, and of course visit Reverb Nation or YouTube or MySpace to check him out. Just a quick note here before I let you go. Tomorrow afternoon's interview is a rescheduled interview. I'm very, very happy to say Milwaukee musician mogul, as I call him, and dynamite individual, good friend of mine, very attractive friend of mine as well, I might add, and just a super nice guy by the name of Tomcat Malta. He's going to be gracing our presence tomorrow, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on the show. We're going to talk about the formulation of his new band, which is Tomcat Joe. We're going to talk about his old music, some new music, kind of find out what's going on in the Milwaukee scene here as it relates to venues, etc. So please be sure to tune in at 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. And once again, much thanks and appreciation again to Rickie Lee Tanner for today's interview. I hope you all stay clear of the snowflakes today if you're in Wisconsin, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Thanks.
Honda wanted to capture everything great about summer in one word: Summerbration, as in the Honda Summerbration sales event. Now throw in some meat and fire and you have a Barbabration. Hurry in and get a 2017 HRV for 0.9% APR from KBB.com's best value brand at your Honda dealer.
Visit your Metro Milwaukee Honda dealer today during the Honda Summerbration sales event.
Based on 2017 Brand Image Awards from Kelley Blue Book, visit KBB.com for information. APR financing offers available for well-qualified buyers. See dealer for financing details.
At Honda, we always look for ways to innovate. That's why we combined summer and celebration to create the Honda Summerbration sales event. You can combine 0.9% APR with the stylish Accord, a car and driver's 10 best. So hurry into your local Honda dealer for the Honda Summerbration sales event. It's amaze-tacular.
Visit your Metro Milwaukee Honda dealer today during the Honda Summerbration sales event.
Car and driver January 2017. APR financing offers available for well-qualified buyers. See dealer for financing details.